Welcome. We're here today with special guest superstar Sara Davis, who's a longtime SongTown member and has had some amazing things happen. So, Sara, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
So, tell me a little bit about abcdefu.
Yeah.
How that came about. I know you wrote that with Gayle and with Dave, who's a very talented writer. So tell me about that day.
Yeah. So we had come out of quarantine, obviously, where I think it was just like a weird time for everybody. It was like trying to write on Zoom, but then also trying to like stay inspired through that. And so Gayle and I had quarantined together. And we were like, cool, we're just gonna like, if the world is ending, we might as well just like hang out, because like we're best friends. And so we're like, let's just like hang out, play a lot of Catan, and then we can also like write songs. And so it just made a lot of sense. And so we had come out of like just a few months of just like living together and working, like the two of us, but then also zooming people in. And so it was just like a really interesting time, I think, for a lot of people creatively. And so then in August of 2020 was when we had that session, and we had worked with Dave like I want to say maybe 3 or 4 days before like the world shut down. So so she had worked with him once before, maybe like 6 or 7 months before COVID started. But then the three of us first worked together like probably the 10th-ish of March. So it was right before quarantine, but we had met in person. And then we had done a Zoom with Dave like throughout COVID, but then we had this session in August, and I had asked Gayle's manager, like, hey, is this in person? Is this at Big Yellow Dog? Is this publisher? And so is it at Big Yellow Dog? And her manager had said, yeah, like, yeah. And so we were so excited because, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of our first in-person sessions. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so then we pull up to his studio, and we pull up at 11 o'clock, and he texts us at 11:01 as we're getting out of the car saying, here's the Zoom link for today.
No.
And we were standing outside, and we were like, oh no, oh no. And so we texted him, and we were like, Dave, oh my gosh, like we're here. What do we do? And he had said, he was like, well, I mean, I'm also at the studio. Thankfully, he was Zooming from the studio. And so he had said, well, I'm here. As long as you guys have been like very careful, like we could do like a distance masked session. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. And so we actually wrote that one like spaced out in his studio, like with masks on, and like, but I think so much of the energy was we were just so excited to like be in person. And so I think that that's a lot of it too, was we were like, that was his first in-person session. Maybe we had done one at that point. But we were just so excited to like see another human in person, and we were back together and like all of that sort of stuff. And so Dave is a big titles guy. Dave is the king of titles and concepts. And so Dave had said like, hey, I don't know what the vibe is today. I don't know what we want to write, but I'm just going to go through my titles, and if there's anything cool, then we can like think about that. And so he had gone through his note, and the first one that he said was ABCDEF off. And we were like, wait, hold on, that's amazing. And it was so funny because Gayle and I both looked at each other, and we were like, that's yeah, oh my gosh. And Dave was like, no, like that was just the first one. I have way better ones. Like, let me just like, that was just the first one. Like, cool, if you still think that that's cool, we can do it, but like, let me read more. Like, that's not the best now. And we were like, no, we have to do this. And Gayle was like, there is no better song for me. Like, we have to do this. And so then he was like, okay. And so we were building off of that. And we were coming out of this like very toxic, very bad relationship that she was in, and that her and I felt like we had both gone through together, you know, like seen all of the bad in this guy, all of the stuff. And so she was finally like in this spot, because she's a better person than I and a lot of people would be in that situation. She's just like, but you know, maybe like if somebody says something terrible to her, her gut reaction is, well, you know, maybe they're having a bad day. Where like me, I'm like, oh my gosh, no, that's ridiculous. And so she had been throughout this breakup very mature and calm, but also as the best friend, I was like, but remember when he did this and he did this, and like all of that sort of stuff. And so she had heard that he had been saying some not so nice things about her. And so she was finally at this point of frustration, and we were excited that we were in person and all of this stuff. And so then we were finally, for the first time, like at that point, able to like dig into the frustration of the relationship. I feel like the way that a lot of people, whether it's a relationship or any sort of thing, can feel that sort of universal frustration point in a lot of things. And so, yeah, so we were just we wrote it on guitar. That day we wrote a verse and a chorus because one of us had to head out. And so then we wrote the verse and the chorus and loved it, thought it was super cool. And then a couple of days later we had said, because at that point I think Dave was going on like a trip or something, and so we had to like do it before the trip. You know, we want to get it done because we don't want to think about it afterwards. Like, we just want to hear the song finished. And so then we had gone in, like, that was a Tuesday, we had gone in the next like Friday and finished it up and changed a couple things. And so we just had a guitar vocal, and that's honestly for like a year basically what we had. It had gone through a bunch of production versions to get it out, and that's why it has multiple versions on Spotify, was because we were going through different versions of production with different producers and all sorts of stuff. And it was kind of like, well, each of them has something so special, and I feel like each of them showed, and honestly was a massive lesson to me, of how much production can change the song, and it can play to a different attitude in a line there, or it was interesting seeing how much it frames it. And so I think that's been something super cool also, is having different versions released so that people can feel different things based off of the same top line, coming back to top line, but lyrics and melody. And it just changes it, and it gives it so many different situations and so many different people and so many different lives.
I was listening to it the other day when I was jogging, so I wasn't looking at it, but it comes on, plays, and I go, that's the one I've heard on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one and another one. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. So it was fun to listen through all of them, together like that.
Yeah, it kind of gives it this whole experience of like it's been interesting seeing people even just online respond to it, and people will fight about like, no, the angrier version is better, and no, the original version, but the chill version is so cool. And so it's interesting seeing, and I think it's been super rewarding seeing so many people have feelings towards all of them, and like, no, the angrier is my baby. And so it's just it's been a really fun thing seeing that.
That's awesome.